are talking today about buying a business, and we're in our third topic. And this one is about beginning with the end in mind, if you will, succession planning and exit strategies. So you're just getting started. Why should you think about that now? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Mainly having to do with a lot of things that maybe we should go into case studies. Maybe I should tell you some stories. So let's start out with what happens if you die holding all of the ownership of an entity. Have you given any thought to who's going to take over? Who's going to, if it's going to be sold, who should it be sold to? Who's going to run it while those decisions are being made? Who's going to prevent people from raiding the assets and keeping everything secure during the transition between owners? There's just a lot of things to think about there. And who is going to have the legal right to make everyday decisions, write checks, keep up the bills of the company? Because if you're forming your company as either an Inc. or an LLC, they go on forever whether you do or not. So someone has to have the authority to go forward, and to get that, is that going to cost your estate, in other words, your heirs, your children, your wife, your husband, your sister, brother, parents, money to go before court to try and get the authority to do that quickly before everything goes and sold to creditors, for example. So planning for death is a big deal, but it's not the only big deal. Disability, particularly in a closely held company with multiple partners, but even when if you're by yourself, it's sort of similar to the scenario we just talked about, where someone's going to have to step in and run it and make sure bills are paid and things are being handled. And once you're disabled, particularly if it's a disability that affects your mental capacity, you're not going to be able to grant that authorization any longer. So pre-planning is key. If you are in a closely held business with other people, decisions cannot be made after the fact and agreements can't be made after the fact should one of the owners become disabled, particularly if that co-owner is active in the business. So if you have a co-owner who is active in the business who is disabled, he or she will continue to draw his salary, and yet you won't have that person participating in the business anymore, and may actually need to replace that individual with someone else to carry the load of the job that person was doing, but you're still having to pay your partner, and that may cause a bit of a financial bind for the company. So again, pre-planning is key. There are ways to deal with all of these things that are, fair and reasonable, but waiting until after the event happens is a problem. Another challenge is, say you have to fire somebody, and that somebody is a co-owner. That can be tricky, but agreeing in advance what is a fireable offense, what is not a fireable offense, if that co-owner is also an employee, is critical. What's going to happen to the ownership interest? Do you really want to be tied to a co-owner who is now pretty angry about the whole situation? So pre-planning and sort of the cool, reasoned honeymoon period is a good idea if you're joining in with someone else, even someone you think you know very well. This sort of stuff destroys families, it destroys marriages, and certainly destroys friendships. It's very, very important. Another thing to think about is succession planning within your family. Some people want to build a company or a business to pass down to their children. Again, that is complicated when you are in a closely held situation with co-owners who may or may not know or even like your children. And after all of your plans are, in effect, they may end up co-owning with someone that they don't believe is qualified to do the job. The people who are financing your operations may have a problem with that transition. So it's really great if you're planning on bringing in quite literally an heir to your ownership and to your position, to give that a lot of careful thought and to pre-plan it as much as possible during your lifetime, and to consider where you might be going as early as possible when you're buying the business, when you're first starting the business out. Other targets as successors to ownership could be a key employee, and you can arrange a situation with a key employee where you sort of during your lifetime reverse roles, and that key employee is gradually awarded with or given the opportunity to purchase minority interests in the company from you gradually over time, until that key employee after a period of time reaches the majority and is a full partner with you. There's some vesting schedules and other things you can do in addition to just sort of doling out shares as bonuses or whatever. And so that's a possibility, is taking somebody who's already actively involved in the business but is not currently an owner and gradually bringing them on. ESOPs are also a succession option, and that's just an employee stock option plan. It gets into some labor and employment issues and touches on some tax laws. You need to consider that, but it's basically a benefit to employees, and that employee benefit can be a partial ownership of a company, or can end up being a wholly owned business, owned exclusively by employees. Eventual third-party sale. If nobody is on the horizon that you feel like you want to sell to, upon your death or disability or what have you, you can also pre-plan what would happen if somebody made an offer. If you are particularly a co-owner and not an exclusive owner of a company, at the beginning, it's a really good idea to incorporate buy-sell language into your operating agreement, or to sign a separate buy-sell agreement if you're going to incorporate in addition to your bylaws, and to sort of decide who's going to have rights of first refusal to purchase the stock and to purchase the ownership interests once the triggers are activated. Triggers, again, being death, disability, or termination of employment, and there may be a few others. So upon termination, how does the whole sale process work? Well, you can define that now. So all of these things are real important issues in buying a business, and we have one more topic after this one I wanted to talk about, and that is, what are the costs and obligations of running your business? So we'll do that next time when we talk about buying a business.